Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our Planetary Health on the Menu event. If you are just joining, please go ahead and pop over to the chat. Let us know your name, where it is that you're calling in from today, and what it is that attracted you to join us for tonight's event. Please also be sure to mute your line as you're coming in so that we can make sure to respect everybody's time and get the event started and running super smoothly. My name is Ayten Salahi. I'm the founder of the Planetary Health Collective. I am so excited to meet all of you and to get to know some of your passions and to help you all brainstorm ways that we can incorporate sustainability into our careers in food and nutrition. So please head over to the chat, drop your name, whatever city it is that you're calling in from, and what it is that attracted you to join us tonight. And also, I'd like to encourage everybody to please update your name with your pronouns so we can make sure to foster as inclusive an environment as possible. And the way that you do that is you head over to your name under the participants list, hover your mouse over the arrow that says more and click rename. And then there you'll be able to update with your pronouns. Awesome. Hi, Kate. So nice to meet you. So happy you're here. Hi, Natalie from New Haven. Jennifer, amazing. We have a sustainability educator to dietetic students. Fabulous, we love it. Hi, Grace. Hi, Rachel. Awesome. Mary has also just sent out a link so that you can be sure to include the whose land you occupy here. It's always good practice to double check and make sure that you know. Hi, Dakota. Oh, very cool, from Canada. Carlene from Manhattan, Kansas. Very cool. Okay, awesome. So we're gonna give people one more minute to trickle in. We do have a full house tonight. So in the meantime, just chat it up, get to know each other a little bit, update your pronouns, let us know where you're from, and we will get started shortly. Very cool. Acute care clinical dietitian Amanda from Minnesota. Hello, Melinda.
Hello.
So good to see you. Well, see you, hear you, see you in the chat.
Hi, I just unmuted myself.
Okay, no, I love it. It's good. I realize I said so good to see you, but I'm just looking at my slide deck, so I can't see you yet.
Well, I just got out of the shower, so I haven't put my real video on.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. Okay, everybody. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. It is 4:33 p.m. where I am. Please continue introducing yourselves in the chat. Again, this is the Planetary Health Collective. We are all about community. So we want you guys to introduce yourselves, get to know other people who are on this call. If you see other people sharing things that are of interest to you in the chat, please feel free to, connect with them, send them a direct message and see if you guys can chat a little bit further. We like to think at PHC that one thing that really sets us apart is that we want to welcome everybody into the fold on this work, even if you don't feel super, super comfortable chatting about sustainability in the food system just yet. We want to welcome you into this work, make sure that you have opportunities to feel expanded and inspired by what others in the field are doing, and also gain access to really high quality resources and educational opportunities so that you can feel more confident and competent when talking about sustainability in the food system. So I'm also popping over a link into the chat right now. This link is going to take you to something called Mentimeter. It is a survey poll that I would love for everybody to answer right now. Just the first question in that survey link. I'm going to pop it in the chat one more time so that we can get a more clear idea of everyone's comfort level in talking about sustainability. So I'm going to introduce the PHC very briefly. And in the meantime, please head over to the link that I just sent in the chat, the www.menti.com link, and fill that out while I'm getting us started. All right. So if you are here for the Sustainability in Food and Nutrition Careers event, you're in the right place. If not, you can hang out still. Again, my name is Ayten Salahi. I'm the founder and executive director of the Planetary Health Collective, and I'm joined tonight by Mary Purdy, who is our director of education, and Bretta Ahlstrom, who is our director of operations. Very briefly, we're just going to chat about some norms and etiquette for the call. I'm going to share a little bit more about PHC, and then we're going to dive right into the panel event tonight. So basic stuff in terms of the etiquette and the norms. Please be sure that your line is muted. Go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat if you have not yet done so. And the most important thing, practice respect at all times. This is a safe, diverse, and identity affirming space for everyone. So any kind of bullying or hate speech will result in immediate removal from the chat. This has never happened, and I know it's not going to start tonight. Of course, as I mentioned before, we want this to be a community event. So participate, ask questions, feel free to share reflections as they come up for you as we go through the presentation. If somebody says something like a quote that you really like, drop it in the chat so that we can all kind of throw some snaps up to it and appreciate it together. And then of course, if you do feel inspired to send along a donation, we encourage you to do so directly through our Eventbrite link by purchasing a donation-based ticket. So just briefly, who we are at the Planetary Health Collective. We are an entirely volunteer-based grassroots movement to mitigate climate change and nourish human health by leveraging this very powerful and unique role of food and nutrition professionals in the fight against climate change. Our mission at the PHC is to activate future leaders, incubate their leadership potential, and elevate their position in the food and nutrition profession, so that we can all use our practice and platforms to create a more just, regenerative, and climate resilient future for all. So our ethos here is that we want to educate, incubate, and activate, and we do that by learning together, shoulder to shoulder, and also teaching how to connect the dots between food, climate, and health. We also incubate by welcoming community members of all experience levels to foster their unique skills and passions. There is room and necessity for every single person in the fight for climate resilient future. So we need you, and we're so grateful to have you here joining us tonight at this event. And lastly, we activate, and we do this by taking action alongside our allies to forge that path forward for systemic change in food and climate justice. So tonight, these are our panelists, Helen Dene and Teresa Turner. I'm going to pass it over to Mary, who is going to introduce everybody and let you guys know a little bit more about the flow for the event tonight. But again, oh, actually, you know what? Before I do that, let me review the Menti results. So has everybody had a chance to pop over and let us know their confidence level? Speaking about, yes, okay. All right, so it looks like most people feel somewhat confident speaking about sustainable food systems. 10 feel not very confident, 3 feel very confident. Okay, fabulous. So to all of you who are in this pink and red area, stay tuned for upcoming events through the Planetary Health Collective. We're gonna be sharing some links later on to join us for events we have coming up this summer to help connect those dots between food, health, and climate. We'll be sending out another Menti link at the end of the session, so please stay tuned for that as well so that we can see how you're feeling as you leave. All right, Mary, I'm gonna send it over to you and stop my screen share.
Thank you, Aitan. Actually, you can keep the screen share. That would be awesome, just so that people can see our upcoming panelists here. And what a thrill to see how many different folks are in our audience tonight. We have students, we have interns, we have educators, we have clinical dietitians, we have people who've worked in the food and beverage industry. And that person who wrote that, I actually have a job that I just found out about that could look really interesting. It's in New York, so contact me about that. So many opportunities for us to connect here, to build this movement, to network, to support one another, to galvanize, to mobilize, to amplify. It's just thrilling. This is our 12th webinar, so we have gone a full year. So we're really, really excited to see this movement just continue to build. And thank you to everyone who's been here, who is here tonight, and has helped to spread the word. So I will be introducing each panelist individually, and then those panelists will come on and give about a 5 to 7 minute presentation. They'll hop off, the next person will come in, I'll introduce them, and then each person will speak, and then we'll have a bit of a question and answer where I'll just ask some questions about their presentations for about 10 or so minutes, and then you all will have an opportunity to ask your questions, which will be collected by Bretta and then put forth to the panelists after everyone has finished presenting and I have finished asking my questions. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce our first panelist. And if the other panelists, if you would turn your videos off, that would be wonderful. And we'll just keep the first panelist, Helen's video on for the sake of just that focused attention there. So allow me to introduce Helen Costello. Helen is a dietitian with expertise in food systems through the healthy food access lens. She co-owns and operates an 80-acre diversified farm called The Buyer at Piper's Pond, which is located on Mid-Coast, Maine, with her partner, Jeffrey Patterson. And they use agroforestry practices such as silvopasture, which I hope she'll share more about because it's super interesting, to raise and breed Scottish Highland cattle, Shropshire sheep. Hopefully I've said that correctly. Try and say that 3 times quickly. And Christmas trees, and a market also for garden vegetables, fruits, herbs, and flowers. So Helen, take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna put a few slides up and just say that I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I see some names that I'm familiar with in the chat, which is fun to see. So welcome everybody, and we'll get started here. I am a registered dietitian, and my background has run the gamut from clinical nutrition to food systems work, and now I'm also farming, which is where my big passion is right now. So, oops, I'm going to skip over that one for now. Our farming system, as they mentioned, is in agroforestry. So we started this farm in the fall of 2018. So we're new, we're still building systems and infrastructure, and our livestock and our cropping systems. So we have 18 acres that we did a forest conversion that you can see in this top slide. And it's silvopasture with our Scottish Highland cattle, our sheep.
We're not seeing your slides, actually. I don't know if you shared your screen because we cannot see your slides.
That's a detail, isn't it?
A great detail. I know that people are eager to see these slides, so we'll give you a second to do that.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Welcome to Zoom. Welcome to Zoom land.
About talking about what I do, right? So, there we go. All right. Are you
Perfect.
seeing?
Yeah, if you can just put it into slide mode then, or a view slideshow, that would be great.
So, so you see the end here, and I will catch up. So this is our silvopasture parcel with our Highland cattle and the other livestock that we have on pasture. We also have some open pasture on another section of the land that we are planting Christmas trees and we'll be combining our sheep with. And we'll also be adding nuts to the silvopasture on the top. And then this year, we'll be trying an agroforestry practice called alley cropping in our vegetable, sorry about that, in our vegetable field. And so we'll be doing adding fruit trees to that. This is, we're an 80-acre farm. This is our soil map that was, it hasn't been updated since we did some of the clearing, but this teal line, can you see my cursor? This teal line is the outline of our property. This section here is, I hope you can see my cursor on this, but the section that I'm pointing to here is where we're doing silvopasture techniques. And then we have this 6-acre pond where we have 3 open fields on the other side of that pond. And this one here, we'll be putting sheep over there with our Christmas trees, and the same with what we call field 2 here. And then this parcel is the vegetable field, and there's about 2.5 acres, so it's market garden size vegetable field. So that's a layout of the land. And then part of a lot of what we do is community engagement, because we want to communicate what we're doing, educate the community. When we did our forest clearing, we had to do a lot of education about what agroforestry was, what silvopasture was, how the animals were going to generate the land. We sell through local direct marketing channels. We don't have a CSA. We've done a little bit of farmers market, and we have a farm stand at the house. We accept SNAP and some of the incentive programs that the state of Maine offers. We have an Airbnb on the site, and agritourism is part of what we do. So you can imagine, just as we got started and wanted to gear up with that, the pandemic hit, and we have our Airbnb open, and we do still have started to have some small events. And then we engage with food access organizations. I'm on the board of a grow to donate farm called Veggies to Table here in the area. So I stay active with food access in that regard. We try and be as proactive as possible. Environmental actions we're not certified organic because we're new to the land, but we use organic practices with our vegetable field. And then, with our animals, to the extent that we can source, it's hard to get organic hay in the volume we need. And then last year in 2021, I was a fellow in the Northeast Climate Adaptation Fellowship, which looked at policy practice and communication in terms of climate adaptation strategies for farmers and farm service providers. And so my project, which led me that I'll start this year, is the agroforestry project in the vegetable field. So you can see the photos here have shown sort of a broad spectrum of what's going on here on the farm. And one last piece about partnering with environmental actions is I have a lot of milkweed and monarch butterflies in my vegetable garden and around my vegetable garden. And so I'm taking a section of that and have a contract with NRCS to plant more long season pollinators to attract more bees to the garden. And I think that I'll just mention briefly the Climate Adaptation Fellowship, just sort of so you can have some sense of what that would look like. This top photo is what my field currently looks like. These are my dry bean, the section where I grow dry beans. And the idea is the conceptual model in the photo below is conversion to alley cropping this spring. And so alley cropping is lanes of trees, or sorry about this, folks, keep doing that. Lines of trees with an alley of annual crops or cover crop or other type of crop between the perennial crops. So the advantage of that is it's an adaptation strategy that will help buffer against some of the prevailing spring winds and intense precipitation events that we've been having certain parts of the year. It helps increase organic matter and soil health, reduces tillage, and it sequesters carbon. And then from an economical or point of view, I can grow higher value crops in this type of system, which makes it of value in a smaller acreage rather than just growing mixed vegetables in the system. So I'll stop here, let our other panelists talk, and I'll enjoy meeting with you in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. You've got some fans, I think, in the audience who would love to know how they can find out more about your Airbnb. So if you have a name of it, maybe throw that into the chat so people can think about visiting. You might get some guests.
Yeah, thank you.
Be careful what you wish for. Great. Well, we'll come back to you, and I have some questions I definitely want to follow up with you on your presentation. But if you would turn your video off, and I will introduce our next panelist, who is Danae Bex. So Danae is currently an outpatient registered dietitian employed with a Navajo Nation hospital and an advocate for healthy traditional Navajo diets and homegrown foods in Native communities. She was born and raised on the Navajo Nation, and she is the charcoal-streaked division of the Red Running into the Water clan. Her concentrations are in diabetes, nutrition, community health education, and intuitive eating. Welcome, Danae. It is a privilege and honor to have you with us. Thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you, Mary. So I have a couple of pictures to present. So let me pull those up. Give me a second here. Where did I put them? Okay, well, thank you so much for dropping in. Can you guys see me? Or see the slides?
Yes, you might. I think it looks good. You might want to just put it into a slideshow form so we can see your present form. Perfect.
Okay, so thank you all for giving me the opportunity to discuss my work. As Mary had mentioned, I am, what do you call it? I am formally an outpatient dietitian in a town called Fort Defiance Hospital, or Fort Defiance, Arizona, which is located on the Navajo Nation. However, in my off time, I do have other projects going on. I am a community dietitian at heart. I love dietitian, and I love teaching people how to improve their skills in meal preparation. And I think a big part of that also includes how to grow your own foods. So ever since I was a little kid, like my goal was to like grow my own foods and try to at least supplement my diet with fruits and vegetables that I grew. So if you aren't aware, the Navajo Nation, much like many other American Indian communities, we are in food deserts. Some of them are in food swamps. And so we have little access to fresh fruits and vegetables. A lot of the times our families depend on shelf stable foods to provide their needs, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I think that also part of improving our health as a community also has to do with how are we growing our food and how are we supporting food sovereignty in our own communities. So that's kind of like the work that I do on the side, besides being an outpatient dietitian. And that's where I come from. So this is just a picture of me in my traditional attire. This is pre-pandemic. So, and then this is our traditional Navajo hogan that ceremonies are held in. So just to give you an idea, this is what my homeland looks like. And so this is Canyon de Chelly, which is a national park. You can actually visit Canyon de Chelly. And this location was probably like maybe 4 miles away from where I grew up. So I had a very nice and easy access to such a beautiful views. And I visited there the other night. So I show this picture because this is called, I don't remember what the lookout was called, but anyway, where you pull off on the side of the road to look at this view, there's actually a little small farm down here. And my family knew the lady who kind of owned this area or managed this area. Her name was Ba Teller, and she lived to be like 105. She was amazing. And every morning, so her residence was down here, and her home where she slept was like somewhere up on one of these areas. So every morning she would actually climb down these walls to get to her farming land. And so as Navajos, we were a very, we grew our own food. That's traditionally how we, I don't want to say survived, but that's how we thrived as communities for hundreds and generations, going way back. So she continued that tradition of growing down in the canyon. However, because of a lot of historical trauma and forced relocation, we lost a lot of access to that knowledge to allow us to grow our own foods. And so she was one of the last people that actually grew like a huge amount of food down in the canyon. And one year we actually helped her grow peach trees. We planted peach trees one of those years for her. And that's kind of how I got into gardening. That was when I was like 10. So this is just a picture of when I was younger. That's me. And we were taking pictures for our Christmas card in the winter. So going back to my formal education, so I became a dietitian in 2018. And so I actually did some of my hours. I did a distance internship out in Boston, and then I also kind of hopped around the US and fulfilled my hours there. So that's one of my co-interns. So getting back to what I do in my own community. So I feel very passionate about encouraging a lot of our other community members to learn the process of growing corn. And so my family has their own, me and my husband have our own strain of our own Navajo corn. And we got that from his aunt's family. So this corn is like heirloom corn, Navajo heirloom corn. So it's not like I can, tell you where the strain is from, because it was passed down through the generations. So we continue that tradition of growing her white corn, but also blue corn as well. And so last year I had invited some people over to help me with collecting the corn and taking off the husks. And again, I feel very passionate about teaching kids as well how to grow. And so this was my backyard, literally my backyard last year. And usually I like to invite people over if they're not familiar with the garden. I have them help me with harvesting and also with planting, and I'm always fine with free labor. So that's another reason why I do it. And so I feel very passionate about teaching my community how to grow their own food and just show them, like, it's not so daunting, and it's, I think we should still carry that on and carry on that tradition of growing our own food and growing our traditional foods. So this is one of the blue corn strains that we have. And then that's my aunt's white corn strain. And this was a few years ago. And so when it got to my own work in my own community, I feel like my calling is to help my community eat healthier. And the way we do that, or the way I feel like is best for my community, is go back to how do we encourage our families to grow traditional foods. And so this is just a picture of me like making some traditional food. And so that's kind of what I weave throughout my own work, like outside of the hospital, but also in the hospital too. So sometimes when I do get consults for people who have like diabetes or heart disease, and they start bringing up gardening and how they remembered their grandma used to garden or their great grandma used to garden, I would be like, hey, you're like, I'm the right person to talk to. Let's talk gardening. And that kind of helps them kind of see like there's other ways to manage diabetes besides just like the strict carb counting or whatever, and which is totally not relevant to many of our community members. And I feel like hooking them in with the gardening talk kind of helps them kind of see how they can be healthier. So this is just an example of a corn stew, a traditional corn stew that we have. It's called Mushugi, and it's made with the white corn and mutton, and this was our squash as well. So this is just a picture of some of the stuff we harvested last year. So getting back to my own advocacy work. So if you are interested in just seeing what I'm up to on the side, outside of the hospital, if you need a little break, So I actually started up a Facebook group during the pandemic called Navajo Land Gardeners and Farmers. So if you guys want to join that and kind of see what's going on the reservation as far as like gardening. Sometimes I do offer like workshops during that, and sometimes it's just a way to connect with other Navajo gardeners, and we can kind of say like, hey, does anybody have any like manure for my garden? Can anybody help over here? So we kind of use it as a networking forum. And then also, as mentioned in my bio, I am also the founder and CEO of Tumbleweed Nutrition LLC. And this is a nutrition education consultant company. So I actually partner with tribal organizations to deliver nutrition education for our American Indian communities. And one of our upcoming partnerships that I'm really looking forward to, we're calling it Corn Pollen to Cuisine and Everything in Between. This event is actually in July 9, and we are seeking donations to help out with some of the administrative costs of this cooking class. So it's gonna, just to give you an idea, it's a pop-up cooking class that's gonna be held on a local farm called Ben Farms in partnership with Biddy Baby Foods, which is a baby food company that uses our traditional corn as a base for their baby foods. So we're actually going to be having like a pop-up breakfast class. And the reason why corn pollen is in there is corn pollen is sacred to Navajos, and there's we collect it when the pollen disperses in the summer. And so there's a way of collecting it. So we want to have this class as to teach families how to collect corn pollen, because some families don't have access to cornfields. But also as part of that, because I'm a dietitian, I got to throw in like, you know, some information about nutrition and cooking and all that good meal prep stuff. So if you're interested in, I believe in the chat box, there's the link to our GoFundMe page. I would really appreciate if you can find it in your heart to donate for our event, because I'm very excited for it. Both of us are very excited. So that's my work. I hope I didn't go over, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Danae. And thank you for bringing an Indigenous perspective on this. I feel like the wisdom of Indigenous communities is often underappreciated, and it's something that's so greatly needed now. And so this idea of bringing in traditional foods, and I think many people out there, when they think of sustainability, they don't realize that sustainability also encompasses this idea of food access and food sovereignty and what that means for so many traditional communities. So thank you for bringing that real life experience and lived experience to this conversation. It's very appreciated. I am going to bring in our final panelist, and Danae, you can turn off your video, and Teresa, if you would turn on your video, that would be wonderful. So Teresa Turner is a school nutrition specialist and an alumna of the historical Tuskegee University. As an Army Child and Youth Services nutritionist, she manages the food service operations of 6 child and youth programs and acts as the child and adult care food program administrator. She focuses on child nutrition, nutrition education, and social justice, also a component of sustainability. Teresa, I'll let you take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
Howdy do. I actually just have one slide. So I'm going to wait for Danae's slide to come down, and then I'm going to share mine. It's actually my contact information. I usually put that up when I'm talking, when I don't have other slides. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Here we go. All righty. Just so you all know where to reach me, I'm quite a people person, so I prefer for people to always be able to contact me if necessary. My journey is a bit unique. I don't work with crops. I don't work on a farm, and also both of you all did. Those slides were beautiful. All the things you're working on are amazing. I like to think of conceptuality. I like to think that even in places where we aren't yet, we can bring it into play. As far as my background goes, I did receive my master's from Master of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics with a focus on leadership and policy from the University of the District of Columbia, specifically the College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, and Environmental Sciences. So that's when I truly got a good taste in depth of working with agriculture. My undergraduate degree was also at a land grant at Tuskegee University, as mentioned, in HBCU. For all of you who don't know, that's a historically Black college or university. But I wasn't as engrossed in it as I am now, because you start college as a teenager. I was 17 when I started college. I was a kid, so I wasn't as engrossed in what the future could bring as far as sustainability. A little backstory, if anybody remembers the show Captain Planet, I always revert back to that because it's something I grew up on. It's interesting how children are sponges. My work is not to do with sustainability, but I think it can be. And I think it's important that it is and becomes that with what I do. Currently, I'm a food service manager, and we deal with a lot of equipment, but we deal in a lot of food waste because I feed children. And we deal with a lot of materials, a lot of supplies. We work with vendors. We get milk from vendors. We get food from vendors. We get supplies. And any type of food service, time you are serving food, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a government organization, whether it's a school or hospital, it's really, really important to be cognizant of ways to curb food waste. Not just because wasting food is irresponsible because of all of the people that need to be fed and can be fed, but also because of the environment, because of landfills, because of when you have food transported in, exported in, shipped in, bussed in on a truck, that adds pollution, that adds all sorts of other parameters. And that adds even more waste that leads to other wasteful things when you're not cognizant of your inventory and things like that. So with what I do, even though it's not listed on my performance standards or anything like that, I give a huge focus to saving resources, to food waste, as well as overall resource waste, because waste not, want not. And I really do live by that. So while my job does not deal directly with agriculture, we deal with the food chain quite extensively because we have to have vendors and we create our food from scratch. We serve very little prepackaged or processed foods in our kitchens with our menus that we have. And so my focus on that is the connection between the foods that we need and how to make that as little as possible so it won't impact the environment as deeply. So that's something that I focus on in my work outside of what I do as a food service manager. That's kind of an extra initiative that I added to that. Excuse me. Everybody else gave their background. So I will say I became a dietitian in January 2017, but it's always been what I wanted to do. Once I applied to college and found out what a dietitian was, I switched from biology pre-med right over to dietetics, and there's nothing that I love to do more. And so that was quite a while ago, almost, knocking on 20, yeah, probably about 20 years ago. And I didn't really link that to sustainability until, and I guess in the past, I would say 5 to 10 years. And I joined actually the Hunger and Environmental Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group just this term. I had wanted to be part of HEN for quite a while. And it just spoke to me. And while I don't do that work now, I like to be engulfed in the work. So that's why when I saw this opportunity from Mary and this collective, I said, you know what? Not only can I learn something, but I can also kind of give a vision of what can be that's not already. And so if you work not in the agricultural setting, but you work in food service or you work in any type of restaurant type setting, or like I mentioned, hospital, thinking outside the box at ways you can be more sustainable ways, and not just for your budget and not just for your bottom line, but for the environment, because that's priceless. And that's something that we all need to keep going even long after we are not here, because we have family members and descendants that will still be here. And one thing I say, people hear me say it a lot, is that we don't work or live in a vacuum. Every single thing we do impacts another system, impacts something else. Perfect example, she brought up food deserts, which I like to refer to more so as food apartheid, because a desert is something that's naturally occurring, and what we call food deserts are usually, if not exclusively, there because of intent, because of the way policies are set up, because of the way systems are set up, because of systemic racism and things like that, where certain communities are built to not have the same access and resources as other communities. So to focus on that, I always put that into what I say, because regardless of what you do, if you work in any type of food or environmental setting, both and either or, it's going to impact how other people live and what the earth looks like in the future. So I'm very glad to be able to share that with you, and I'm very glad to be able to learn from both of these two women. Very exciting panel, and I look forward to the questions, and I look forward to what you all take from it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And thank you for all these awesome hashtags, including Be Anti-Racist. I went and saw a fantastic lecture by an Indigenous community member of Michigan, whose name is Kyle White. And he said, one of the best things you can do to fight the climate crisis is to be anti-racist, is to fight racism, because the very systems that are in place that are perpetuating racism are the same systems that are perpetuating the various mechanics that are allowing the climate crisis to exist and to worsen. So really an important statement there. And thank you for bringing all of that into the mix. And man, you are absolutely in sustainability as a food service dietitian, reducing food waste and procuring things from places that require fewer resources. So fantastic. Let's get all of our panelists back here. I want to ask a few questions, and then I know we've got some questions from the audience members, but Teresa and Helen and Danae, if you would all put your cameras back on, that would be fantastic. And I have a couple of individual questions, then I have some collective questions with the time that we have. Helen, I would love to know, because I think silvopasture and agroforestry are not necessarily familiar terms to a lot of dietitians. And I would love to hear from your perspective as a dietitian, why is silvopasture and why is agroforestry beneficial to human health? What does it do?
That's a good question. Well, the agroforestry, silvopasture is way that we're choosing to have livestock on our land and work the land with us. And then that in turn, because they're primarily grass-fed and hay or grass and some grain, there is research to show that there is some different fatty acid profile in the animals. And the heritage pigs we raise in particular have a higher omega-3 fatty acid profiles, and certainly the cattle do. So that's one piece. And then the agroforestry piece, again, is more for climate adaptation strategies and environmental strategies, and having more of a permaculture type of growing and mixing fruit and vegetables in the system. But because it's organic system, and I'm reducing my tillage by doing that as well, the crops are healthier. The pest resistance is better, and a lot of other agronomic, there are good agronomic reasons to do it, and bringing healthier food without pesticides or herbicides into the community is part of what we're doing with that. And some evidence to show that plants that have to develop pesticide resistance may have higher plant polyphenols and other health benefits, human health benefits, phytonutrients in conventional systems.
Yeah, there are some great papers that have come out around that exact issue over the past several years. That's really exciting to say. I'll put a link in the chat too on that front, because I think it's really important for us as dietitians to understand that health connection too. And Danae, you are also an educator in your own right, teaching children about traditional foodways. What kinds of things are you bringing to that conversation, and how are the children responding themselves to this kind of knowledge and an understanding of perhaps their ancestry and traditional foods in their history?
So kids are so fun to work with when I have some of these get-togethers, because you kind of see the garden through their eyes and you say like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I got so used to like seeing carrots come out of the ground and they're like freaking out like, oh my gosh, carrots. And then this one kid, his mom told me, he was like, that carrot you gave him that he pulled out of the ground, that's the only carrot he ever ate. And he was like telling everybody it was so sweet and it was the best carrot he's ever had. And his mom was like so surprised. And so with the way the kids are responding, it's just so amazing to see the light in their eyes and see like, oh my gosh, this is how you grow food. And at the same time, I feel like it's very important to let them make mistakes in the garden. When we're teaching them how to garden, it's like it's not going to be perfect, and be prepared that they're going to mess up something in your garden. And so it's not going to be like this beautiful landscape. And I tell kids like, see what happens. They say, Danae, does this work? And I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. And then they go and like try to figure things out. So I think it's that hands-on approach to gardening with kids is very important, and just be prepared that they're going to make mistakes, and that's part of the learning process.
Wonderful. And will you remind us of the name of that dish? It was like mushugi or mushkigi.
Oh, neshjiji. I'll type it out.
Okay, I think we need to know more about that, whether it's with mutton or you can make a vegetarian version of it, whatever that might be. I just want to say that word a few more times.
Neshjiji. So I'll go ahead and link the where you can purchase neshjiji. And there are some indigenous companies that have sprouted up in these last few years, and they focus on neshjiji, ground blue cornmeal, and then some other. Actually, you know what? Okay, I'll type it into the chat box so you guys know where to go.
Teresa, I'm curious about some of the specifics around your work as a food industry person, or food rather service. Can you hear me okay? You are on mute, just so you know. You can't hear us?
Yes, I can. I apologize. I had a video start from that link that you sent. I was like, what is that talking? That's my computer. I apologize. Please repeat. My apologies.
No worries. In your role, you talked about reducing food waste. And I think many people who are in the dietetics field who may be working in food industries or trying to work on that issue, because we know it contributes to 8% of greenhouse gases. We're wasting 30 to 40% of our food using all of these resources. What is an example of how you have been able to implement some kind of food waste reduction program technique? Talk us through what that actually looks like realistically.
So what's interesting is my perspective, and sometimes bringing things to the table that people don't think about. I don't reduce in the way you might look at reduction. My main goal is feeding and educating children, and child nutrition and healthy eating habits for children, working with the Child and Adult Care Food Program. One way that I believe that waste, and whether or not we have been successful in it, it remains to be seen, but it's something that I mention as I train, and that is making sure that we serve a full reimbursable meal. And some of them might say, what does that have to do with food waste? Well, the food that we purchase, we are required by law, by our agreement with USDA and CACFP, to serve enough food for every child to have a reimbursable meal. When the adults don't role model, when they don't encourage the menu, when they're not excited about the menu, then the food that we make doesn't get eaten. We have to make the food regardless of whether or not it's eaten. So I always let people know. I created this little matrix actually in the past, maybe 3 months, that I've been using to really get people to understand that link, because the pushback is always the same. At the CDCs, it's a little different because these are toddlers and pre-tots, so they're going to make them the whole meal anyway. But when you get to the youth side, the school age and the teen center, it's like, oh, well, they don't eat this, so we're not going to give it to them. Or they don't eat this, so we're not going to make it according to recipe, and so on and so forth. And I explained to them, whether or not they eat it, we still have to purchase it, prepare it, and serve it. And so that's still the same resources. We're still using the same amount from vendors. The truck still has to come the same, whether or not we serve it. We don't get our full reimbursement, but we still have to spend the same amount. And I explained to them, If the child never ever sees the food and we never ever make it, of course they won't ever try it. And so we'll continue to waste it. The more we encourage it, the more we stick to it, the more we make it familiar and fun for them, the more they will try it, the more they will like it, the more they will eat it, and the less they will waste it. And it's an ongoing process. But if people actually stick to that, then we will begin to see results. So that's the angle I took, because my priority is definitely the children. And in my position, the waste is extremely important, but it kind of comes second because we have to take care of those kids. And so that's the angle that I chose, because whether or not people care about nutrition as much as I do at my job remains to be seen, but I know they care about children or they wouldn't be at a child development organization. So I just really explained to them that we do not want to take a child's opportunity to try something new and to learn something new. And along with that, hey, we'll also reduce food waste, so why not?
Excellent. And I love that this is a more of a holistic conceptual framework rather than just putting a Band-Aid on the issue, but really looking at it from root causes and the exponential effects of what you're talking about and the impact that has on just providing more children with better food and also the tangential, whatever that word is, tangential operations around reducing the food waste as a result. So wonderful. And I'd love to ask this question to all three of you, and then we'll get some audience questions in here as well, which is, what do you feel like set you up for success in the current role that you have? However you relate that to working in a food system around sustainability, whether it was education and experience, a certain person, a book you read, like what do you feel like it was that allowed you to be successful in the role that you currently are in?
If no one wants to start, I will start.
Okay.
It's at FNCE 2014 in Nashville. I attended the pre-FNCE session on that Saturday, the school nutrition boot camp. I had no experience with school nutrition, child nutrition program, but I saw this panel included Donna Martin, included Dale Hayes, and I saw their passion. And I said, there is nothing else on this earth I could possibly do. Like, what do you mean another job? I have to serve children food. Like, what else could there be? And my passion is my success. It's the drive. It's the days where children don't want to try anything. It's days where you know the food is good, but they still turn their nose up. It's the days where the adults don't want a role model, that I remember what feeding children means and what it means for their education, what it means for their bodies, their minds, their spirits, their health and growth. And that's what makes me successful. It's not a tangible resource. It's my deep, deep love of making sure children have healthy and safe food. So that's what it is for me. It's that introduction to it and seeing the passion for those women on that panel and bringing it with me in everything that I do.
Tennessee, 2014. All right, we heard it. Janae, looks like you got something to say.
I can go next. So I gave you guys a little peek about what disrupted our food systems, our traditional food systems with forced relocation. And I think since that time, we've kind of approached nutrition in Native communities like, you have to eat quote unquote healthy food, which means they had to eat Western food. And so I feel like it's what drives me every day is to make sure that my community know that their traditional food is healthy food. And so we need to go back to how do we value our traditional food? Because I've had so many conversations with many of my patients thinking they can't eat Mushugi, they can't eat blue corn mush, they can't eat kneel down bread. And it's like, who told you this? Who told you this so I can yell at them? Like, and like I've had elders like break down in my room and cry because they thought that they couldn't eat those foods. And when I told them that, they were just so tearful. I was like, yes, you can eat it in order to manage these issues, these other issues you have going on. And so I feel like it's kind of my role is to help advocate for my community, for those community members who aren't able to advocate for themselves. And I got to kind of be like that bridge in between that Western healthcare medical field who can speak the lingo of all these different medical conditions and break it down to our patients who may have like a ninth grade reading level or a ninth grade education, like my dad. My dad has a ninth grade education, but he knows information about Navajo traditional way of life. So I think that's kind of what keeps me going, and that's where I'm at now.
Wonderful. And thank you for sharing that as well. It's so great to get these personal experiences. It really means a lot. We just have a couple minutes here before we launch into just a few questions. So Helen, anything in particular that has driven your experience in terms of what makes you successful now? You're on mute.
There have been many things over the years that have brought me to where I am today. But when I finished my nutrition education and RD, and I always wanted to find a way to connect farming and nutrition. And there have been many steps along the way where I've collaborated with farmer organizations, with nutrition projects, again, through the food access lens, and had this opportunity a few years ago to actually dive into it in this way. And Teresa didn't mention, because this is very new, but my consulting business kind of took a nosedive during COVID after a certain period of time. And I'm working as a school food service manager at a local elementary school here in town. And I want to pick your brain about your successes, but that's how I get to do my passion in developing this farm with my partner, and could not do it without him.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, the three of you. It sounds like there's some heartfelt connection here already. We're bonded. So let me pass this over to Bretta to field some of the questions from the participants today. Thanks again.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for the information. We have some questions. We only have a couple minutes left, so I have a question for each of you guys, and then we'll start wrapping it up. And to our audience, try to be as respectful of your time as possible, but if you can stick around for another minute or two to get all the great answers, that'd be awesome. So Helen, I will start with you. Some people are curious about the regional food and farm-based businesses, and are just kind of curious on how you see your small local food system and your farm being supported by your local economy, and what do you feel like is missing? Do you feel like you need to see some policy changes? Like, what's necessary for your farm to be self-sustaining?
Sure, and that's something that I think any size farm is dealing with on different levels today. I think what we've decided to do is try and distinguish ourselves from the well-established other small farms in the area, and doing that in different ways, and growing different types of food. So for example, in the silvopasture system, we'll be adding nut trees to that, and the drops will feed the livestock. Those that don't drop will sell, and using those types of strategies to bring higher value to a small farming system. And it's going to take some time. We're certainly not leaving our day jobs right now, and the farm with animals takes quite a bit of time. So you have to want the lifestyle too, I think, as you develop that. But the idea is finding markets, distinguishing yourselves from the other farm. And in Maine, the farming community is small, and you make a lot of friends and you help each other out. And they may sell some of your product at their farm stand where they have no traffic, and there's bartering that happens. So on a small, intensive level, that's right now, that's how we're approaching our viability.
Great, thank you. Danae, we had quite a few people asking about the water situation on Navajo lands, and have you seen like climate change issues becoming like a bigger issue with the farms that you work with, or just within your community? What's going on with that?
That's a huge issue we have going on, and climate change is really hitting us hard. So we're in the high desert. So our elevation is about 6,500 feet. So we're higher than Denver, and that means that we're very dry. And I remember when I was a kid, we would have snow that was 2 feet high, and now we barely had like a dusting this past winter. And that is affecting our ability to grow foods. So really, it's only down to the people who have access can actually grow, because even our traditional method of dry land farming, our corn, it's the corn that we developed over generations is meant to be drought tolerant, but it's not meant to be like, completely water free. And so the way in which we grow our different techniques kind of help preserve that water, but at the same time, we don't have access to as much water as we did like 100 years ago. And so a lot of the elders or a lot of the families just say they don't grow anymore because it's just it's hard to even just do the dry land farming. So it really does come to policy, and it goes back to what Teresa had mentioned is racism. Like, why don't we have access to water? This is our traditional homeland. Why is it being routed to Phoenix and Las Vegas, our traditional water resource, which is the Colorado River? That was where we got our water from. And now all that water that used to come to us is now being routed to California, to Los Angeles, to Phoenix, to Las Vegas. And so that's indigenous water that everybody over there is drinking. And now we don't have access to that. So that's how climate change is impacting us, and going back to those racist policies, which we don't have. Like, we are starting to advocate a lot more to change the policy, but it also goes back to a lot of the treaties we had set up historically from 200, 100 years ago, and trying to honor those treaties and getting back to how does the federal government honor our treaty relationship? Because American Indian communities, we're not only an ethnicity, but we also have sovereign status. So we're like a country within a country, and we have to, we have that political relationship with the federal government. And so now that we're starting to talk more about food sovereignty, we're always getting back to the water. And so we are advocating a lot more for that. But at the same time, it's just like, federal government's like, oh, give water to the tribe out northern Arizona, or give water to Phoenix, So it's like,
I feel that. I actually live in Phoenix, and yeah, we've been I've been in a couple of communities where that's a much bigger discussion, and even just speaking with some other Indigenous individuals on kind of like even navigating those tribal relationships and things like that to get the things they need to pursue food sovereignty has been really enlightening for myself. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's something everybody could think a little bit more about and integrate into their daily lives too. So thanks. Okay, and then Teresa, I have a little bit of a more analytical question for you. I know how you were talking about your kind of approach to food waste as far as people are like the people that you're kind of sending the food to, and they're like, oh, kids won't eat that. But is there someone above you that you have to advocate to or justify your food choice decisions to? And what data and do you need to support your decisions?
I actually do not, simply because our menus come from Army headquarters. A registered dietitian put together our menus to be CACFP compliant because of the meal patterns we have to follow to receive our reimbursements. So it's already at its healthier status. The thing that I mostly have to root for as far as decisions is having not even my decisions per se, but the decisions of the people that are in senior leadership to hold people accountable. So when they hear things, to have some type of action take place when they hear things like, oh, they won't eat that, or we're not going to get a plate, or when it comes time to role modeling or family style dining, throwing our plate in the trash before we even start the meal, those type of things, getting people to see how detrimental that is to both the children and to food waste, and to do something about it. So I advocate for it from that standpoint, not necessarily decisions I'm making, but for them to make better decisions or stronger decisions, I should say.
I would say that's so needed. I used to work at SAC just as like a childcare provider. So definitely big issues there. So that's awesome to hear on just kind of that advocacy that you have to integrate into your daily work. All right, well, I know we're over time, so I'm gonna let I-10 wrap it up, but thank you guys for sharing. You're so knowledgeable, and I think we've just gleaned so much information today.
Amazing. Yes, I just want to very quickly echo everybody's gratitude and just thank you all so, so much for coming on and sharing about your personal journeys and sharing some wisdom with us for how our audience, our community continue to prioritize sustainability and everything that we do in our career as food and nutrition professionals. I'm just going to pop over to the Mentimeter and just review what everybody's responses have been so far. So if you've not headed over to that Menti link to let us know if you're feeling inspired, please hop over and do that. Looks like we've got 13 responses so far. Not too bad, but if you can hop over and let us know how you feel, that'd be great. It looks like people are feeling super inspired to learn more about how they can become more involved in sustainable food systems work. A lot of you are planning to seek out further education on sustainable food systems. Many of you are also feeling more confident about how you can incorporate sustainability into your current role. We are so, so, so grateful that you guys are leaving this event feeling more inspired and passionate about this topic. Please stay tuned for our future events. We have a lot of stuff going on this summer. Beginning in June, we'll be hosting an event called Cook for the Climate, where myself and a co-host, actually Danae, who's with us here tonight, are going to be preparing a recipe together, and it's going to be Navajo blue corn mush recipe. It's going to be amazing. We're going to be chatting about all things Navajo cooking, Navajo foodways, sustainability, and really get into how we can connect the dots between food, climate, and health while we create a recipe that kind of does that for us all together. So head over to that link in the chat to register if you have not done so already. Please also consider donating to Danae's work. You heard her story and some of the challenges that our community is facing. Every donation makes a really big difference. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate your energy. Thank you to our speakers for your time, and hope to see you all again soon. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody, take care.
Do you want to stop the recording?
Yeah, I do to stop it. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, no worries.